Closing arguments today in the government's case against those Bear Stearns hedge fund managers, Ralph Cioffi, Matthew Tannin. The big question, though, is have prosecutors been able to effectively make their case? We're going to answer it right here. We've got Dan Colarusso, Bloomberg Television managing editor, and Bill Singer of Stark & Stark, a criminal defense attorney with 3 decades of experience. Bill, let's start with you, because I'm wondering to myself if this isn't Dennis Kozlowski all over again.
Well, I think Mr. Cioffi and Tannin are hoping it may be to some extent.
Yeah, they sure are.
But that's really the inside take on the case. This is a case for the government to lose, not necessarily to win. They've already won the case by filing it. So we're all waiting to see whether the proverbial message gets sent, or whether the government really doesn't do a good job on this case and makes their life and the public's much harder in years to come.
Based on what you've seen thus far, though, has the government made a solid case? Because the impression I'm getting is that compared with some other trials, first of all, this took a really long time to get to court. And secondly, the arguments they've made just haven't been that good.
Let's also not forget that they threw out some key evidence here. There was that smoking email, and that ended up in the trash bin. And that's a big blow to the government. That's a big blow to the government.
Well, if I'm sitting at the defense table, I'm probably smiling right now. I'm feeling very good about how we've defended the case. If I'm at the government table and I'm reading the newspapers and I'm watching Bloomberg, I'm not so sure that I'm getting feedback that's telling me I've done a great job.
The public wants blood here, right? Bear Stearns, the first firm to go down, the first big Wall Street firm to go down. Obviously, there were many other casualties. And it was in some ways precipitated by the disaster in those Bear Stearns hedge funds. They lost $1.6 billion. So who do you blame? Is it the prosecutors for poor procedure? Or is it just the fact that maybe they didn't have that strong a case to begin with?
Well, Eric, that's the key strategy. That's the lineup when day one of the case. Prosecution has to keep this simple and stupid. And what they have to basically say is, forget about losses. This is not about losses. This is about 2 criminals in Wall Street bankers' suit who lied and ripped the public off. And the defense, of course, wants to bring in a dump truck of documents to show how complicated everything was and to remind everybody that this is an unprecedented collapse in the market. And my guy didn't have anything to do with that.
Right, 150 exhibits, 20 witnesses. I mean, you look at the government today. The government has to do a lot in its closing arguments. They have to win back the judge, who has not been particularly friendly to them today. So the judge.
And you can read.
The body language, absolutely. They have to reinforce the fact that these guys lied. Right, that this is not anything else, that there were lies told here, and they have to also show that there was a conspiracy, that they had teamed up and said, we can't let the real information come out. And that's, if the government doesn't do that in the closing arguments, it's going to be a rough road for them.
But as you point out, their hands are somewhat cuffed because some of the most revealing statements to that end were not admissible.
Especially on the conspiracy, especially on the conspiracy.
Right, and don't forget, the government put 530 documents into the record. You want to talk about numbing a jury to sleep.
Right.
530 documents, when this should be a simple case where you point at Cioffi and Tannin and you say that they're liars and they're dishonest and they're unethical, and take a look at your brokerage account and you probably have half of what you had. These are the guys that did it.
Yeah.
But when might we get a decision, a verdict in this case?
I don't know. They say it's going to move fairly quickly, but it's a matter of how much the judge ties everybody up on the closings, what everybody tries to get away with, how much it comes back, and how that closing argument goes, if that goes smoothly or not. But I'll tell you one thing. Here, they have to make it. They have to make sure. Their attorneys have to make sure Cioffi and Tannin don't become the poster boys for the crash. And already they are in some ways. But you know, that's the key thing. You have to say, hey, what did you say before, the tsunami defense,
Dan,
right?
That's it. Right.
You know, I don't want to step on your line, but it was just, Bill's had a great point. And then go into the tsunami defense a little bit.
Well, if I were defending them, and if they could afford to pay me, what I would argue is that this is a tsunami defense, that an unprecedented wave came that nobody knew about. When it got here, we couldn't do anything about it, and we went underwater along with the whole market. And nothing we could have done would have prevented it, and nothing we did changed anything. And if the jury buys that, that's a very potent defense, because you argue that you were victimized by this unprecedented recession just as much as everybody else.
All right, we have to hold it there.
Terrific.
Bill Singer from Stark & Stark, thanks so very much. Dan Colarusso, our managing editor. We're talking about the Bear Stearns hedge fund managers. You just heard it here. It's possible they may walk away scot-free.